Chapter 3. Sad, Beautiful Dreamer. I returned from school that afternoon with an emptiness that made my chest feel hollow. One foot followed the other mechanically, the soles of my shoes barely leaving the road. A group of grade school children ran past. Their laughter had the tinkling sound of china, crisp and musical in the clear, sharp air. Children, I realize, don't really have to contend with deep sadness. They are wooed out of the presentation with a toy or some kind of promise. But being mature means realizing life is filled with dark days too. Tragedy had sent me headlong into reality. All the things I had seen before now looked different, even nature. The snow had melted. The white oaks with their powerful broad branches, and beech trees, and poplar trees, all the leaves turned a rich shade of green. I was vaguely aware of the birds flitting from branch to branch around me. Above me, the lazy milk-white clouds seemed pasted against the soft blue sky, but they looked like nothing more than blobs of white. Their shapes no longer resembled camels or whales. My imagination was imprisoned in some dark closet. Usually the first warm kiss of sunshine filled me with excitement. Things that normally made me depressed or unhappy looked small and insignificant against the promise of budding flowers or laughter of young children rippling through the air. But all the spring glory in the world wouldn't bring my daddy back. I missed his voice, his laughter, more every passing day. Grandma Arlene was wrong. Time wasn't healing the wound. It made the emptiness wider, longer, deeper. As I plodded along, I carried my school books in the dark blue cloth bag Daddy had bought me a long time ago. I had 2 tests to study for and lots of homework, so the bag was full and heavy. Alice had remained after school for a current affairs club. There was also a rehearsal at the school for the talent show, and I was supposed to play my fiddle in it. I had volunteered months ago, but since Daddy's death, I hadn't picked my fiddle up once. I no longer had the desire or the confidence. Everyone else seemed to have something to do, friends to be with, activities to join. Once or twice I tried to muster some enthusiasm about something I had done before Daddy's death, but an important part of me died with Daddy. I knew my friends at school, even Alice, were losing patience with me. After a while they stopped pleading, begging, and encouraging me to do things with them, and I began to feel like a shadow within myself. Even my teachers had begun to treat me like a window pane, gazing through me at someone else, hardly calling on me in class, whether I raised my hand or not. My smiles were few and far between. I couldn't recall the sound of my own laughter. Even before she lost her job, Mommy had been complaining about my moods. Now it was just constant grievance. "If I can let go, you can," she lectured. Then she declared, "Maybe he's happier where he is. At least he doesn't have to fight getting old. You won't remember him as anything but young. And where he is, he doesn't have to worry about money." I told her that's a horrible thing to say, but she just laughed. "Suit yourself. If you want to walk around with a sad sack face all the time, do it. You won't have any friends, and you certainly won't attract handsome boys." "I don't care," I shouted back. "Boys and parties, long conversations on the phone, scribbling some boy's name in my notebook, none of that mattered to me anymore." Why couldn't Mommy realize that? I didn't want to have an argument with her today, but since she lost her job at Francine's and not found another yet, I expected she'd be home when I arrived. She said I was so depressing to be around that I made her lose her appetite. It always sounded like just another excuse to go off with Archie. Today would be no different. I braced myself for another lecture, but when I opened the trailer's front door, I wasn't greeted with her criticisms. Instead, I saw suitcases spread open on the floor. Mommy had rushed about folding clothes and dropping them into the luggage. "Good," she said when she saw me. "You're home early. I was afraid that one time I wanted you here, you'd find something silly to do." "What are you doing, Mommy? Why are you packing these suitcases?" "We're leaving," she said, smiling. "Now these 2 suitcases are yours," she instructed, pointing to the 2 smaller ones near the sofa. "I'm sorry, that's all you can take, but that's all we have room for in the car right now. Pick out your most important things and pack them." My mouth dropped open. "Leaving? Where are we going? I don't understand." "I don't have a lot of time to explain, Melody." She put her hands together and looked up at the ceiling, as if giving her thanks. "The opportunity had come and we're taking it," she declared. "Hurry, get your best things packed, and remember, we don't have room for everything. Okay?" "I don't understand." I stood at the doorway and shook my head. "What's to understand? We're leaving," she cried. "Finally leaving Mineral Acres. Be thankful. Be gloriously thankful, sweetheart," she pleaded. "But why are we leaving?" She held out her arms and turning her eyes from her right hand to her left as if the answer were right before us. "Why?" she laughed thinly. "Why would we want to leave this godforsaken place, this town of busybodies and people who have no imagination, no dreams? Why would I want to leave a 2x4 trailer in a retirement park filled with people inches away from their own graves? Why? Huh." She laughed again, then lost her smile. "You're supposed to be a smart student. You get all those hundreds on your tests, and you ask why?" "But Mommy, where will we go?" "Any place," she said. She stared at me for a moment, and then her eyes grew small. "We're going to explore and look for a nice place to live, where I can have the opportunity to do something more with my life and not be smothered and stifled. Now that your father's dead, we have no reason to continue to live in the coal mining town, do we?" She smiled again, but nothing about that smile seemed false. "We've always lived in Mineral Acres," I said weakly. "Because your father was working in the mines." "Really, Melody? Besides," she went on, "I've spent more money than we have in the bank to cheer myself up after your father's death. The life insurance is gone, and you know how our bills are now, how close we are to not paying them every month. You're always warning me. I can't even pay for this trailer without a job, and I'm not going to beg for my job back at Francine's. There just aren't any jobs here for me. I'm not going to become a waitress. Look at me," she said, throwing out her wide arms. "Do I look like I can make a living for us in this town? I can't type, and if I could, I would hate to be caged in some mine company's office. We have no choice. I have to get to where there's opportunities before it's too late." "But how are we going?" "Archie will be here in 20 minutes, she replied, "so we don't have much time to jabber about it." "Archie? He's leaving too?" "Actually, it was his idea," she added with a happy smile. "We'll go off in his car and..." "Archie?" "We're going away with Archie," I asked incredulously. "It's more than he's going away with us," she said, and followed up with a nervous little laugh. "But he's going to be a big help. He has friends in the entertainment business. He says I can be a model." "Oh, Mommy, he's lying. He's telling you these things just so you'll stay with him." "What? How dare you?" She wagged her forefinger at me. "Archie is a sensitive person. He cares about us. As it turns out, he has no one either. It makes sense for us to all go together. Please," she pleaded, rolling her eyes. "Get busy packing." "But what about my school? And you'll make the work up in a different school, a better school." "Oh, honey," she said, clapping her hands together, "isn't this exciting? We could possibly be wrong about trying to find a new place where we live. I know you're not happy here anymore, right?" "That's because of what happened to Daddy." "Exactly. And nothing's going to change that, so why stay? A new beginning, a fresh start is what we all need." "But do we have to do it before it's too late, Melody?" Do you want me to wait until I'm too old to have another chance? That's what happened to a lot of people who got stuck here. Well, it's not going to happen to me, she said with determination. She smiled again. I have another surprise. I was going to save it until we actually left and we weren't on the road, with nothing ahead but the better future, she said. I stared at her dumbly, wondering what additional surprise she could possibly have. Don't you even want to know what it is? She asked when I didn't speak. I shook my head and gazed around. It's overwhelming. The suitcases on the floor, the house a mess, and clothes thrown everywhere. What? I finally asked. Our first stop is going to be Providencetown, Cape Cod. You're going to see your father's family, finally. Well? She said. I didn't reply. Aren't you excited? You were always asking about them. Now you'll get all your answers. Providencetown? Daddy's family? Yes, isn't that a good idea? I don't know, I said. She was right. She had surprised me. Something was ringing true. I took a deep breath and my heart pounded. With everything happening so fast, I couldn't think straight. Shouldn't we plan this better, Mommy? Can we sit and talk about this first and get organized? No, because that usually means we won't do it, she whined. As Archie says, if you don't do something when you have the urge, you probably never will. Why do we have to go with him? I pursued. She tightened her face and narrowed her eyes. I like Archie, Melody. He makes me laugh, and I'm tired of crying and complaining. I'm tired of people looking at me as if I were some sort of freak because my husband was killed in a mining accident. But not Archie. She sat down on the sofa and motioned for me to join her. I sat next to her and I was cautious. Then she pulled me into her arms for the first time since Daddy had died. She held me tightly and began to stroke my hair slowly, and I began to relax. It felt good to have my mommy back. I'd missed her so much. You'll like Archie once you get to know him. He's just the medicine that I need and what you need, honey. She paused but kept caressing my hair. I hoped she would never stop. The only thing, she added softly, is after we leave Sewell, I don't want you to call him Archie anymore. Why not? His real name is Richard. Archie's just a nickname. How come he can leave so quickly? His job? I said, hoping that she'd get mad and stop holding me. Perhaps he had been caught watering the whiskey, as Alice's father thought. It's not the sort of job for a man like Richard wants for the rest of his life. So we made a decision. Now, Pumpkin, I want you to go pack and remember only 2 suitcases. But I'll have to leave so much behind, I protested. George and Arlene will look after it, she said, and after we're settled somewhere nice, we'll have everything shipped to us. Grandma Arlene? I muttered, realizing what this meant. I wouldn't see her anymore. Did you tell her about this? I was just going to do that, Mommy said, but forcing me to stand and talk was taking out of her time. I have things to pack too. Don't I have to tell the school? Will you stop this chatter, Melody, and get packed? Everything will be just fine. We're not the first people to move, you know. Although I bet you can count on one hand as many people escape this rat trap. She smiled and rushed off into the bedroom. I just stood there gazing around, still finding it hard to believe we were going to leave Sewell for good. What about Daddy's grave? Are we going to say goodbye? And what about Alice and my other friends? I had to turn in my library books. What about our mail and the bills that we still owed? Surely we had to go to the bank. There's so much to do. I put my book bag down and walked slowly through the short corridor. Mommy had her closet open and her clothes were thrown over the bed. She stood in the center of the room, pondering. I hate leaving so much behind, but I'll get new things, won't I? She declared. Mommy, please, let's wait and do this right. Aren't you packing? She turned at me angrily. I'm warning you, Melody. When Archie arrives, we're going out the door, she threatened. What have you packed? Goes. What you haven't stays. Understand? I swallowed down a big lump in my throat and thought for a moment. A suggestion born out of desperation came to my mind. Maybe I should stay and live with Grandma Arlene and Papa George until you find a new home for us, Mommy. She shook her head. I thought of that, but Papa George is sicker than ever, and Grandma Arlene has already got her hands full. Besides, that's not really your family, and you can't be your legal guardians. It's too much responsibility for old people. You hear? They're not old, I insisted. Melody, get your things in those 2 suitcases. Then her voice softened. Don't make things harder than they have to be, honey. I'm depending on you to be a big girl. I'm a little frightened too. Everyone's afraid when they start a new life. I need your support, Melody. She paused when I didn't move. Besides, you know Daddy would want you to do what I asked, she said. Wouldn't he? She smiled. Wouldn't he? Yes, I reluctantly admitted. I lowered my head and turned away. When I stepped into my small room and gazed about, I found myself confronted with an impossibility. There were so many precious mementos, especially things Daddy had bought me, like my first doll and all my pictures. Those suitcases Mommy had set out for me were barely big enough to hold 1/10 of my clothes, much less my stuffed animals. And what about my fiddle? 10 minutes, Mommy cried from her room. I had 10 minutes to decide what I would leave behind, maybe forever. I couldn't do it. I started to cry. Melody, I don't hear you putting things in your suitcase, she called. Slowly, I opened the dresser drawers and took out what I knew were necessities. My underthings, my socks, some shoes, sneakers. Then I went to the closet and chose my skirts and blouses and 2 pairs of jeans and some sweaters. The suitcases filled up quickly, and I gathered as much of my photographs as I could stuff in them under the clothes. Then I tried to squeeze my first doll stuffed cat and teddy bear, and some gifts from Daddy. Mommy came and saw how full my suitcases were and how impossible it was to close them properly. You can't take all that, she said. Can't I have another suitcase? No. Richard has things too, and I have to take 4 suitcases for myself. I need my good clothes jobs when I go look for a job and have an interview, she claimed. I told you, we'll send for the rest. But I don't need much more, just a small carton. And Melody, if you can't decide what to leave here, I'll decide for you, she said, and reached down to pluck out the stuffed cat out of the suitcase. No, I cried, that's the last thing Daddy gave me. Well, it's obviously either this or the teddy bear or some of your clothes. Decide. You're a big girl now, you don't need toys. She snapped and threw the cat back into the clothes on the suitcase. I pressed the stuffed animals down and sat on the suitcase so it would close and managed to get the snaps to hold. The sides of the suitcases bulged as they were heavy, but I had gotten the things I positively could not leave behind. You only need 1 coat, Mommy instructed, and the boots you're wearing. Don't forget your gloves. I'm taking my fiddle, I said. Your fiddle? Melody, please. That's a backwoods mountain person's instrument. Daddy loved to hear me play. Well, he can't hear you now. You're not going to play it much where you'll be going, I'm sure. Maybe you'll learn how to play the guitar, or I won't go if I can't have my fiddle. Mommy. I folded my arms under my breasts and planted my back firmly against the wall. I won't, I swear. She sighed. I guess it'll take time to get out of this shanty town for you. Suit yourself. She marched down the corridor to finish packing her cosmetics. I had forgotten my own toiletries and had to open a suitcase to get them in. I was still struggling to close it when Archie arrived. He wore a brown sports jacket and a shirt and tie and brown slacks. He looked a little better dressed than usual. Hi, he said, entering my room without knocking. Almost ready? No, I said mournfully. It only made him smile. I bet you're excited, huh? No, I said firmly this time. Scared, huh? Well, there's no need to be scared. I've been down this road before and nothing to fear. His voice was full of bravado. I'm not scared. I'm upset we're leaving so quickly. Best way to go is just get up and go, he snapped his fingers. Either you're a man of action or you're a talker. He straightened his shoulders and pumped out his chest. I turned away so he wouldn't see the tears glistening in my eyes. Haley, he called. Oh, you're here, good. Mommy came into my room. I'm just about packed. We can start loading the car, Richard. He widened his eyes. She knows it's your real name and Archie's just a nickname, Mommy explained. Oh, good. Never liked that nickname. Archie Richard winked at me and went to get Mommy's bags. Are you packed? She asked me. The bags are full. I've just got to get this one closed. No problem. Archie paused as he dragged Mommy's two largest bags over to the floor. He took a moment to sit on my suitcase, pressing the fasteners and snapping them shut. You need anything, Melody? You just ask, he told me. I snorted, hating the idea of asking him for anything. While we pack the car, why don't you say goodbye to Mama Arlene? Mommy said. I lowered my head and put on my coat, and then I took my fiddle in its case and started for the door. Archie complained about how heavy Mom's bags were. He struggled to get them down the steps behind me. Careful, Mommy screamed. Some of my nicest things are in those bags. Daddy could have picked them up with just a couple fingers, I thought. I knocked on Grandma Arlene's trailer door. Melody, honey, what's wrong? She knew there was something wrong the moment that she looked at my face. Oh, Grandma Arlene, we're going away. We're leaving the Mineral Town Acres for good. I rushed into her arms. I told her everything quickly, including the suggestion that I remain behind to live with her and Papa George. We hadn't even moved from the doorway before I had it all said. Oh, she said, nodding. So that's why she was asking me about George's condition. Well, come in a moment, she said. Where is Papa George? I asked, not seeing him in his favorite oversized chair, watching television and smoking. Before she could reply, I heard his heavy cough from their bedroom. He's a bit under the weather tonight, she said. The doctor wanted him in the hospital, but you know Papa George, he wouldn't go. When did you say you were going? Today, right now. Right now? But she never said, right now? The realization shocked her as much as it had me. Her small hands fluttered up to her throat like two little songbirds. She shook her head in disbelief. She wants you to keep our things until we send for them, I explained. Of course, I'll take good care of everything. Oh, Melanie, she said, actual tears flowing from her eyes now. We'll miss you. You're the grandchild that we never had, or the child we never had. I don't want to go, I wailed. You've got to go with your mother, honey. She needs you. She doesn't need me, I said defiantly. She has Archie. Archie Marlin? Oh. She took a look of disapproval and sadness, and her eyes became darkened. What's going on out there? Papa George called from the bedroom. You better go say goodbye to him. The way Grandma Arlene said it put an icicle in my chest, chilling my heart. I walked slowly to the bedroom doorway and gazed in. Papa George looked tiny under his comforter, only his head crowned with stark white hair showed. He coughed violently for a few moments and then spit into a metal tray on the side of the bed. Then he took a deep breath and looked at me. What are you women jabbering about? We're going away, Papa George, I said. Who's going away? Mommy and me. And for good, I said. He stared, took another breath and coughed a bit, and then pushed hard to get himself into a sitting position. Where is she taking you? We're going to see Daddy's family. They live in Cape Cod. The old man nodded. Well, maybe that's best. Leaving on quick notice, though, ain't you? Yes, I haven't had to say goodbye to any of my friends, and I haven't gone to the cemetery yet. He thought for a moment, then reached over to the night table drawer. He took something out and beckoned for me to come closer. I want you to have this, he said, and handed me a gold-plated pocket watch. I'd seen it before once or twice and knew what was inside the inscription. To George O'Neill, 10 tons of coal. It still keeps good time, he said. When the watch was opened, it played one of Papa George's favorite tunes, Beautiful Dreamer. I can't take that, Papa George. I know what it means to you. It'll mean more to me to know that Chester Logan's little girl has it now and forever, he said, urging me to take it. I reached out and clutched it in my hand. This way you won't be able to forget me. Oh, Papa George, I could never forget you, I moaned and threw my arms around him. He felt so small, all skin and bones, and his hug was barely anything. I was shocked. It was as if he was wilting and disappearing right before my eyes. He started to cough again and pushed me back so that he could lower himself under the blanket. I waited for him to catch his breath. Send us postcards, he said. I will. I'll write every day. He laughed. A postcard now and then is all we need, Melody. And don't forget to play that fiddle. I didn't spend all that time teaching you for nothing. I won't. Good, he said and closed his eyes. Good. Hot tears streamed down my cheeks. I felt as if my lungs would burst. An ache was deep. I turned and saw Grandma Arlene standing in the bedroom doorway, her tears filling just as hard and fast. She held out her arms and we hugged, and then she followed me out. Mama and Archie had finished loading the Chevy. He slammed the trunk closed and got behind the wheel. Mommy came over to Grandma Arlene. I didn't know you meant you would be leaving this soon, Haley. It just worked out that way, Arlene. I guess Melody already asked you to look after our remaining things if you can. I'll keep an eye on the place, sure. Once we're settled, I'll see about getting the things that we want. Where's George? He's lying down, she said. Oh. They exchanged a knowing glance that made the weakness in my knees. Well, I'll call and drop you a line every now and then, Mommy promised. My mind was racing. There was too much to think about. Grandma Arlene, I'm going to leave my school, my books, on the kitchen table. I'll call my friend Alice and she'll get the library books, okay? I asked. Of course, dear. Here's the keys to the trailer. Mommy handed them to Grandma Arlene. She took them reluctantly. Her gaze went to me and her lips trembled. I better go put the books on the table, Mommy, I said. Hurry, we want to get on the road. We've got a lot of distance to cover, she said. Go on, I'll wait here with Arlene. I ran back to the trailer and entered. For a moment, I just stood there gazing around. Yes, it was a tiny place to live, and our furniture was very ordinary. Yes, the rugs were worn and the curtains were thin, and the wallpaper faded. The faucets dripped and the sinks were stained with rust. The heat never worked right, and in the summer the place was an oven. I had wished and wished to have a real house instead, but this has been home to me, and now I felt as if I were deserting a poor old friend. Daddy and I had eaten thousands of meals at that small dinette, and I had curled in his arms 1,000 times on that worn-out sofa while we watched TV. I blew out candles on many birthday cakes here. In that corner, we decorated our small tree. Although piles of gifts under it were never impressive, it was always exciting for me. Goodbye, trailer home, I thought. Goodbye to the sound of the rain's drum beat on the roof while I slept, studied, or ate my meals. Goodbye to every creak and groan in the wind, to the funny moaning sound of the plumbing brought laughter to Daddy and me dozens of times. And how do I say goodbye to my small room, my small private world? Once this was a special place, now I was looking at it for the final time. I bit down on my lower lip and pressed my palm against my heart, holding in the ache. And then I scooped up my school books and library books and put them on the kitchen table. Archie honked his car horn. I glanced at everything one last time, pressed it in forever to my memory. Archie honked again. Goodbye, I whispered, to the only home I've ever known. I rushed out the front door, afraid that if I paused or looked back, I would never be able to leave. What took you so long, Mommy complained, her head out the window. I got in the back seat. It was half covered with some of Mommy's clothes, and I put my fiddle in the car floor. Be careful of my things, she said. Here we go, Archie pulled out of our lot. I pressed my face to the window. Grandma Arlene stood there in her doorway, small and sad, in her hand in a frozen goodbye. The tears blurred my vision, and some of them ran down the glass. I sat back to catch my breath as Archie spun around the entrance to Merrill Archer's and shot into the road. We're stopping at the cemetery, aren't we, Mommy? I asked. What? What for? To say goodbye to Daddy, I replied, my voice filled with desperation. Oh, Melanie, can't we start this trip on a happy note? I've got to say goodbye to Daddy, I explained. I've got to. My voice was full of desperation. Archie looked at Mommy and she shook her head. It's on the way out, he said. Well, I'm not going out with you, Mommy said. I couldn't bear it. Archie stopped at the entrance of the cemetery. Mommy said it would break her heart to go in again. It reminded her too much of the funeral. We're only waiting 5 minutes, Melody, she told me. Are you sure you don't want to come out, Mommy? She stared at me a moment, her eyes looking genuinely sad. She gently shook her head. I said my goodbyes some time ago, Melody. I had to, or I couldn't go on with my life. I opened the door and jumped out, running the pathway past the monuments until I reached Daddy's stone. I walked up to it and threw my arms around it, the way I used to throw them around him. I pressed my cheek to the hard granite and closed my eyes. Oh, Daddy, we're going, but I'll come back as often as I can. Mommy's got to get away. She can't live here anymore. I know you would forgive her. You forgave her for everything, I said bitterly. And I know you would tell me to help her, but I can't help her how I feel. I fell to my knees in front of the stone and bowed my head to say a little prayer and then plucked a blade of grass growing on the grave and put it inside Papa George's pocket watch. It would always be with me, I thought. I kept the watch open, so Some of the Beautiful Dreamer would play. Daddy loved that song too. Mommy and Archie were honking the Chevy's horn again. I closed the watch and stood up and gazed at the mountains in the distance, drinking in the trees and the bushes. I wanted to press this memory, this place into my mind as firmly as I had pressed the blade of grass into my pocket watch. Then I kissed Daddy's gravestone, leaving some of my tears on top of it before I turned to walk away. I got back into the car without a word. Archie and Mommy both glanced at me and then turned the car around and we started down to the road that lead us north, first to Richmond. Mommy squealed in delight as we passed the town behind the sound read, now entering Sewell, West Virginia. I'm leaving, she cried. I'm getting out of here. My prison sentence is over. I gazed at her and squinted. What did she meant by that? I would have asked, but my chest ached, so I knew my voice would crack as soon as I tried to speak. Archie sped up. I turned on the radio and began to sing along with the music. Mommy swung around to look at me. Oh, be happy, Melanie, please be happy. If not for yourself, then for me. I'll try, Mommy, I said in a voice barely above a whisper. Good. The scenery whipped by. I barely paid attention, but I saw enough of the familiar territory and fell back to fill my heart with sadness. I gazed through the rear window, watching Sue disappear behind a hill, and with it, Daddy's cemetery rested. Then I turned back around looking ahead. Trembling, I felt no less frightened and confused than a newborn baby, kicking and screaming into the future, terrified at the unknown.